Welcome back to TimeOut with the Sports Doctor podcast, where life, sports, and medicine intersect. We're very glad that you continue to support this podcast. You can get the information on any platform where podcasts are played, as well as getting the video content on YouTube. But if you want to just get one place to find all the content, go to my website at Dr.Derrick, and you will find everything on that website. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. So welcome back to another episode of Time Out with the Sports Doctor. And we have a very special guest for you today. This is actually a very special moment for this podcast because we are now an international podcast, having Miss Tessa Wilson with us from the UK today. So it's actually very early in the morning here in the US. We were joking. I told her this is the Breakfast at Wimbledon episode for the podcast. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, thank you for coming on. We've been working through this because we have this time difference, I think of about 6 hours or so. I believe it's about midday for you, but it's very early here. But we had to do arranging schedules and different things to get this done. But I'm very glad that you're here, and I can't wait to share your story.
Thank you.
All right. So you are the CEO of For Icons and Gifts for Icons, which is a scrub company, as well as gifts for medical providers. So tell us about your company. Well, just first tell us what your company is.
Okay, so I'm the director of For Icons, which is a predominantly a scrubs work essentials type business for health, veterinary and dentistry professionals. I'm just about to launch Gifts for Icons, which will sell, as the name says, gifts for those professions, but also for education workers and social care workers, because I predominantly focus on public sector services because that's where my interests and values align.
Okay, so the icons, what's the icons piece? Because, go ahead.
The icons is because I really believe since COVID, which opened my eyes to so many things, that we need to refocus on what we consider to be icons. And for me, those people are the modern day icons of our time and deserve that title. And we should be pushing and advocating for people to recognize that those ordinary people are absolute. I don't want to use the word heroes because I don't like it, and it brings all sorts of other connotations and expectations along with the role, so I don't like that word. But definitely I think the public sector, certainly in the UK anyway, predominantly public sector workers are the icons of our times, and that's why I chose that name for the business.
That's great. And I'm glad that I asked that because I had no clue. But, on behalf of, me being a medical worker and a medical provider, healthcare provider, I want to say thank you because that does mean a lot. And as we know, it seems like it's been years ago, but 3 years ago, 2020, everybody goes on lockdown and the pandemic starts, and there's hero signs and there's all the kind of applauding physicians and applauding nurses. And then as this continues to drag on from weeks to months to years, that love and support seems to fade away. And many other things, I've spoken with doctors where they felt completely unsupported, or they felt like their health and longevity and everything was being put on the back burner for many different reasons. But, thank you for seeing the work that we do as being important and for celebrating us in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that, during that time, we were all out there clapping and saying how wonderful they are and they're heroes and they're doing all these things. And as soon as we don't need them anymore, where has all that gone? Where has all that support and gratitude where has it gone? Because certainly in the UK, I don't know if you're aware, but there's a lot of unhappiness
Right.
from the public sector workers who are out striking because their pay's been eroded over so many years, and the cost of living's gone up, and they cannot keep, or sometimes can't even keep themselves and their families afloat because the pay is not in line with the inflation and cost of living rises. And it almost feels like now that we were saying you're heroes and you're wonderful people, and now that we don't need them in that capacity anymore, it's, well, we don't value you, we're not going to pay you your worth, you're not going to have a pay rise, and almost blaming them for all the problems and issues that are in the health services, that are in the schools, that are in the social care services. And I just think we really need to be more supportive, and we need to stop calling people heroes, because that suggests that they have superpowers, they have super resilience.
We were saying, in the UK about rising prices.
Yeah, and to the point where we have nurses and teachers and social workers using food banks. That's just not
Wow.
right. That's absolutely, something is desperately wrong when we've got these people we were calling heroes 3 years ago who are still suffering the impact of COVID. And we're now no longer clapping, and we're blaming them for all the ills that are going on, and saying, you're not working hard enough, and almost saying that all the problems are because of those individuals, rather than saying, actually, it's the structures, the processes, the systems, the lack of funding over more than a decade that has led to these crumbling systems, that if it wasn't for those people working within them, goodness knows what kind of mess we would be in, And I don't know how that compares to the US, but that's certainly the situation in the UK.
Sure. And, as you know, most of my listeners are from the US, so it might seem kind of odd to hear about things like this about the healthcare system. Of course, we have problems with our healthcare system here, but the salary part is completely different. The ability to be able to take care of your family, we're frustrated about certain things, but in many cases, not the ability to take care of some of the most common needs of food, clothing, and shelter. I realized that there was recently a strike amongst some of the healthcare workers, especially some of the junior physicians in the UK. And you have a daughter that's also a physician, correct?
Yes, my daughter, she's a general practitioner.
Sure, sure. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, different world, different set of problems, but thank you for still highlighting the struggles that our healthcare workers and, like you mentioned, just daily people are going through in your country.
Yeah. I think as well, that obviously in the UK we have a national health service, so
Sure.
that's a service that provides healthcare that's free at the point of delivery, and it's a great system. And it's a great system for those people who would not otherwise be able to afford healthcare. And in a lot of respects, it works really well. However, if we have politicians whose agenda is to long-term erode it to the point where it can no longer sustain itself and the only solution is private providers, then that appears to be the path we're going down. And so what do you do with a system in order to bring in the private providers and to be able to say that they are the knights on white chargers are coming in to save us, is to starve that system, make it not work, make people unhappy about it, so they grumble and complain, this isn't working, I'm having to wait 18 months for my operation, or it's taking me 2 weeks to see a doctor. So make people unhappy, which is where we're at, starve it of the funding, and then say, you know what, this is not working, let's bring in some private providers who can make it work for us. And that appears to be the pathway we're heading down. And I know that, you know, a lot of people have said, well, private provision would be a really good thing, but really would it? Because certainly things that I've read about the, you know, in comparison to the US system, is that people who are on the lower incomes can't always provide the level of insurance they need to be able to protect themselves adequately. And then if they can't protect themselves adequately, when they need those services, they're put into financial positions that can make them lose their homes, make them lose everything. And I was also reading that one of the biggest financial disasters that precedes homelessness in the US is people being unable to pay their medical bills. So, you know, in a lot of respects, it's not the panacea that we're looking for, and maybe some kind of hybrid service would work better, but it almost creates a two-tier system of the haves and have-nots.
Yeah, which can be not what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
You kind of referenced that before, but the difference, one of the main difference in healthcare is access. And as you mentioned, sometimes waiting 18 months for a procedure, or how long is the typical wait time to get in to see a provider?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not a healthcare professional. I
sure,
don't know. All I know is the anecdotal things of people
sure.
waiting a
Yeah,
long time to be able to see health professionals. And, you know, it's not uncommon. In fact, it's probably quite common to wait 2 weeks just to see your doctor locally, you know. So
mhm,
that's because the number of GPs is far fewer than it was even in 2015, and yet the demand for services has grown greatly. So you've got fewer doctors and more people, higher expectations, and, you know, and then you throw COVID into the mix, and you've got all the demand from, because operations are not taking place and the hospitals are not providing the same level. And I'm not, you know, trying to say that in a negative way. It was just a
absolutely.
fact that because of that and people's chronic conditions need managing, where do they go? They go to their local doctor. So on top of being depleted in their workforce, they had the additional demands from the, you know, that secondary care service, and then they had to deliver all the vaccines as well. So they just absolutely on their knees, and we've had really negative press saying these lazy doctors, why can't I get an appointment? Well, that's why you can't get your appointment, because you can't expect people to work twice as many hours and not be affected by it, and not be burnt out, and not be stressed, and even to the point where, you know, people are leaving in droves because they just cannot continue in that same vein anymore. And especially when the salaries don't, if you've got an amazing salary, you could say, all right, well, yeah, you know, I'm really well paid for this, but they're not.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it saddens me to hear that as a healthcare provider, because I know the sacrifices that nurses, physicians, whoever it might be, have made to get to the point where they are. And it saddens me when you have to leave a profession not on your own will, but because of other circumstances around you. So, you know, many times we work in a bubble and we can be ignorant to really what's going on around us in the world. But thank you for highlighting that. So let's shift to, talking about you and what led you to be an entrepreneur. And, you have this company. What was the drive to create this company?
Well, it's not the only business I have. This Fit for Icons was predominantly set up following COVID, or even during COVID, because the drive, I've always had that drive to something meaningful, I suppose. That's just the person I am, and I know that that's from my own personal background. I'm not sure I really want to go into that a great deal.
Sure.
Just to say that my mum died when I was 8, and so I'm from a large family of 6 children. I've got 3 older sisters, I'm the youngest girl, and 2 younger brothers. The youngest brother has cerebral palsy and learning disabilities. My mum died when I was 8, and my father was not able to cope and turned to alcohol. My older siblings all went to live with other relatives. My youngest brother was taken into care, and that left me and my brother with my father. And I think during that time, it taught me a lot of life skills. And I don't say it in a negative way at all, because I look back on that time and I cannot relate to that little girl at all. It's almost like that was not me. So, but what it did do was give me a lot of skills to be able to cope with. I have a really strong self-belief. I can cope with anything life throws at me, no matter what it is. And if something's difficult, so what? It will not be difficult forever. I can move on from that. I think that's what my background gave me. But it also gave me a sense of, so for a period of time, with just me and my brother, I was predominantly the main caregiver. And I say that very loosely because there was not a lot of caregiving, we just existed together. And so when we went to school and things, we were not clean, we were not fed, we were very clearly different. And so I developed a sense of feeling different, and children are cruel, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And when people are not around, they call you names, and they're generally not nice to you. And I think I developed almost an inferiority complex from that, feeling I'm not good enough, I don't fit in, that kind. And I took that with me to adulthood. This is the first time I've ever shared this story with a lot. The only people that know this story probably are my close family. So that experience really shaped me into who I am. But what it also gave me was this drive and determination to get as far away from those starting blocks as I possibly could. And that's never gone away. I still have that drive almost, and I can only say it was probably based on fear of ever going back to that point or that situation. My saving grace was I was bright, and I had some amazing teachers, certainly in the early years, who recognized that and nurtured that in me. But certainly from the other side of it, the social side of it with the other children, I did not feel as though I belonged or I fit in or I was good enough. And so I suppose that's been the driver for creating the businesses. But also along with that has been a sense of, because I felt like that and never wanted other people to feel like that. And so I and always have been acutely aware of other people feeling like that. And so I would seek out those people that I felt were being made to feel like that. And for that reason, and so when I was a teenager, and I was looking at where do I go, what do I do with life, I fleetingly did consider being a doctor. Because I didn't have family support or anything else, that was just never going to happen. And honestly, looking back, would not have been the right career for me anyway. So I couldn't go to university. I just did not have any kind of support that would enable me to do that. So I was looking for, what can I do that will allow me to have a job, have a home, but at the same time meet my interests. And so I became a nurse. And that way I went to live in the local nurse's home, and I had a job. I just met my first boyfriend, who I then ended up marrying at 18, left nursing to have my first child, and I never went back. And I never went back because it was not the right career for me. And so I had my son, and I had become interested in, having worked in nursing, looking at how it's not just about the person's health, this is about the holistic self. And one of the biggest impacts on a lot of people is their social care environment, the environments that they live in. So I've become interested in social care and how it all fit together. And so I went on to did go to university, and I did a degree in health and social care policy. So that was, my interests in that area were growing. So did the degree in that, and then ended up going to work in a local authority, in a social care authority. I also then went on to do a degree in social work, and ended up climbing the career ladder within those environments. Worked in commissioning, worked in quality management, and when I got to senior management level, thought, I'm really not affecting the change that I want to affect. And through those jobs and through going through the senior management process, I became more and more interested in the business side of how these services works. And again, being in the UK, where they are public sector services, I felt really disillusioned with the way they were going. So they became more and more focused on the target driven and chasing targets, and they lost sight of who they were. And during that time I did an MBA, and thought, I can affect more change from outside of the business, because if I haven't got the restrictions placed on me that I have within those services, I can do something else. So I became a business consultant, worked across health and social care services for many years, but found increasingly that because they became more target driven, and they couldn't operate as businesses, because as a public sector service, your job is to not grow that business. You're not looking to grow your business, you're looking to gatekeep. You're looking to prevent people accessing your service, and the worse things got, the higher the barriers got for people entering those services, because of a lack of resources, and also because of the target-driven side of things then stifles innovation, totally stifles innovation, because resources are going into the wrong place, and there's nothing there to develop new services and create things that actually really meet people's needs. So it became more and more a one-size-fits-all type of approach. And I really became disillusioned with that. By the time my children had grown up, my daughter went on to medical school, my son's an accountant. And so by the time they'd grown up, I really wasn't sure what direction I wanted my life to take. And I don't think ever too old to do something new. You're never too old to do something new. And it was at that time my daughter had got married and she was having her first child, and I thought, I'm going to take a step back here because I want to enjoy my family and I want to be an active participant in my grandchild's daycare. And so I started taking a step back, and then COVID happened.
If you're enjoying this episode, don't wait to the end to share it. Share it now. Share this with a friend or a colleague that you think might find value in this information. And then also make sure that you click and leave us a 5-star review and give us feedback, because we really value your feedback and your input. Now back to the episode.
Fundamentally changed who I am, but what it did was take me back to my roots, and take me back to my roots in a really positive way, because somewhere along the line I'd lost myself, and I had become, again, because of the background and this drive to get away from that, what I'd started doing was focusing on material things. And the more material things I got, the more secure I felt. And so filling my life with material things and thinking that's going to make me happy. And of course, so I went down the pathway of buying big expensive things, and I just lost who I was, I think, and got to a point where during COVID, or when COVID started, it really made me totally reevaluate my life. And that's how the new business was born. So when COVID started, and I don't know again about the US, but in the UK, we had a desperate shortage of PPE.
Yes.
So absolutely desperate. So people were going to work terrified because they did not have the basic necessities to keep them safe. And of course, my daughter being one of those. So as a parent, I was thinking, okay, what can I do to help? What can I do for my little bit for my local community? And so I started sewing face masks, firstly for her, and then was inundated from her colleagues, and then that grew, and I thought, I'm going to do this properly. So I started an online group, and within the space of 2 weeks, I had over 400 volunteers, all sewing face masks, scrubs, ear protectors, scrub bags, anything needed, but not just for health professionals, but also for teachers who were having to go in and teach the children of frontline workers because they were classed as essential key workers, for social care workers, lots and lots of local GP practices who were still providing services. And so it grew into this enormous thing that I hadn't intended it to do at the start. And during that time, heard the most heartbreaking stories.
Sure.
And even, things like end of life care could not be given within hospices and things because people didn't have the right PPE. Well, that's something's going wrong, drastically wrong in supposedly rich societies when we're at that kind of position. And again, as we said at the beginning of the of our chat, that people were out there saying these people are heroes, oh how wonderful, that some people were living at the hospitals and living within their job so that they wouldn't take this home to their families, and they were that selfless giving to others and that service to others, and it really made me think, where have you gone? Where have you lost yourself along the way here? And so I wanted to do something to give back. And
That's very beautiful.
yeah, so I wanted to do something to give back, but to give back in a meaningful way. And the Fit for Icons, the scrubs and the scrub wear, that's an easy thing to do. That's not really giving back. And so I really sat and thought, what can I do? So the Fit for Icons was set up with a view to creating a business that would be able to really give back. So alongside Fit for Icons, I have set up the Fit for Icons Foundation. The Fit for Icons Foundation is about...
Hold on before you get into that. Let's just put a pin for the Fit for Icons Foundation.
Okay,
because
yeah.
I definitely want to hear about that. But number one, thank you for sharing your story, and because it all makes a lot more sense when we hear where you came from and how you started. You know, as a young child with the responsibility of your brother and overcoming poverty, overcoming brokenness, and really continuing to bring that with you and kind of creating a fire and a drive to, number one, be successful, but also not to be successful on your own and to help other people. And just listening to you, it sounds like you never lost that touch of, it's okay if I'm successful, but it's not okay if everyone around me is suffering, which I think is
Yeah.
something that most people, or a lot of people, lose along the way as you become successful and as you acquire more things. And then, not taking, you mentioned becoming a nurse and not having the education and then going back, getting an MBA, but continuing to climb and use all those previous steps to continue to shape who you are, as a consultant, and now, as an entrepreneur and things of that nature. So I just wanted to highlight that and thank you for sharing your journey. And then you mentioned COVID, how it changed you. I think COVID changed a lot of people. COVID was the birth of this podcast, to be honest. COVID was the reason why many of us took a step back and said, okay, was okay, but were we really living to our fullest potential? Were we really doing our purpose that we were placed on this earth to do? And I think looking in that mirror and actually having a time to slow down and step back a little bit really changed the outlook of a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right. So now you were mentioning the Fit for Icons Foundation. Tell us about that.
Okay, so I started the Fit for Icons business with a view to creating a range of scrub wear that was actually fit for purpose, because during the COVID situation and having sat with this voluntary group and made scrubs and all the other things that we made to be able to give some not so great PPE to people, but better than nothing. And during that time, people were saying, the polycotton, that they're made of polyester cotton. So, and we all know cotton is a really absorbent material. So actually, it's not great for infection control. Polycotton scrubs are unfit for purpose, and yet certainly in the UK, we continue to purchase them and buy them as everyday uniform. And they were also baggy, shapeless, horrible things. People didn't feel valued in them. So I created a beautiful range of scrubs for people. The business exists to, firstly, Fit for Icons gives 10% of all its profits back to charities that support key workers, only key workers. This is not for general charities. This is for charities like Frontline 19, who set up during COVID, and that was to provide free and confidential mental health therapies, services, interventions to frontline workers to recognise the difficulties that they were going through, the mental distress that COVID was causing, and the rising numbers of people struggling with burnout and mental health issues that needed some support and were not getting it. So that was one of the recognitions that those services provide support and intervention directly to these people that we are calling heroes, but actually not doing anything practical for them. Words and clapping don't mean anything. Actions mean something.
Yes.
So that was the Fit for Icons side of it. And then I thought, this is bigger than just that. This is also about, and again through COVID, recognizing that there is the equity and equality issues in terms of access to services is a global problem. This is bigger than your local community and even the country that you're living in. There are people out there that cannot access vaccines because their countries can't afford to buy them. And as a human being, I cannot, with all conscience, turn a blind eye to that. Just can't do it. So the Fit for Icons Foundation is predominantly about supporting charities, to those charities that provide direct interventions, not the big charities that you've no idea where this money is going.
Sure.
And some of the local things we've been doing in terms of fundraising for that is one of the initiatives set up by a doctor called Jog to Jab. And so people undertake sponsored jogs, walks of whatever distance, and they give that money to UNICEF to provide COVID vaccines, or just vaccines in general. So we're looking at vaccine equity in that particular initiative. And so that's what the foundation does. It's about equal and equitable access, not just to health services, but also to education services. So we're looking at particularly the education of girls, and in some countries, and also looking at social care services for street children that are not maybe getting the support that they need. And that's my long-term vision, is to grow and develop that foundation so we can provide more of that type of support. And the way we can do that is partly through Fit for Icons generating money to be able to support that foundation as well. So that's what came out of COVID for me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you. As well as Fit for Icons and the Gift for Icons that is just about to launch, we also have family businesses, which are property businesses. So we have a property business and a finance business. And the property business started for me when I was still working as a business consultant, and I went to the dentist, and in the waiting room was a property magazine. So I picked it up, started reading it, and I was hooked. Right from that first moment, I was absolutely hooked on property development, and how at that time was, I want to build my own home, or not physically build it because I don't have that skill set, but how can I can project manage it, So I spent about 2.5 years researching everything I could on all the various aspects of property managing the build of your home, and sold the family home and went on and built a family home. And that was the beginning for me of the property development business. And since that time, we've gone on, and it's now a family business, the property development. We also have a finance business, and it's almost the flip side of the property development in that to be able to build, people need funding, so we provide finance predominantly to property developers.
I love the
So we
way that
have,
you've used every little tool or every little lesson along the way to continue to build. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is being able to find answers to problems. And definitely your background and the way that you seem to approach things is, okay, there's a problem, I can come up with a solution. And not only can I come up with a solution, I can help to support other people as I do that. So on Time Out with the Sports Doctor, this is your final timeout. So you've shared a lot about your background and your story. And thank you for sharing that background, because it makes me understand and it helps the audience relate more to your drive. But there's many people who have ideas and have a determination to make a change, but feel inferior. That's one word that you mentioned, or are paralyzed with the fear of what could go wrong. So if you could just speak to someone who knows they have an idea, know that they have a way that they can really impact the world, but are stuck in getting started. Just speak to that person for me.
I think for me, it's reframing the way you look at negative experiences. So when I look back and I've said I don't relate to that person, but I still carry all those lessons. And I think the biggest thing was adversity. If you're coming from that kind of perspective, adversity does not define who you are. It's not the totality of who you are.
Yes.
And if you reframe it in a positive way and say, adversity gives you skills and experiences and a mindset that you can carry through life, and whatever you are faced with, you know you're going to be okay. You know you're going to deal with it. You know that, yes, it might be hard. It might, for a while, you might have to take a step back, but you're still moving forward. And to keep focused on that, adversity makes you stronger.
Yes.
And it actually, for me, I look at it as having been a positive thing to get me to where I am in my life now, and not just now, but to carry me through the rest of my life. So those valuable skills learned through adversity, I see as a positive. I don't see them as a negative at all. And that it's about self-growth. And so don't focus on when people say to me, they focus on getting rich and the financial wealth. You're looking at the wrong things, because I've been there and I've been in that position, and I absolutely know that mindset. But then when you start to think about, why do you want those things? Why do you want the finances? Why do you want the wealth? And actually what we're looking for is to be happy. And so look at other ways that can make you, and people say, yeah, but those material things will make me happy. They won't, because it's not until you think they will, and it's not until you get them, you realize how unimportant they really are. So you can have your nice sports cars, you can have a nice house, you can have a boat, you can have all those things, and then when you get them, you realize, I really don't feel that different. It's not brought me what I expected it to bring me. And I don't know if you've heard of, there's a UK entrepreneur called Stephen Bartlett.
No.
And he's an amazing young man. And he wrote a book called Happy, Sexy Millionaire. So he had set himself a target of achieving £1 million And this is what he expected. These were his goals. He was going to be happy, he was going to be sexy, he was going to develop this six-pack, and he was going to be this millionaire. So those were the, that's what he was only a very young man when he set those goals for himself. And then when he achieved it, he said he felt really deflated, that actually his expectations of what it would feel like to get there did not meet the reality of being in that situation. So going on to say that you read so many books that push you down this route of wealth is the panacea, and with wealth will come happiness. It will not, because it's about, you can't run away from yourself, and you can't, your own expectations of what that's going to bring you have to really think about that. So it's about I think, a journey about yourself. It's a journey about learning, not how much money I can get, because a great quote I like is, there are no pockets in shrouds, and no one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. Right. So I always think of those things. So it's about a journey of learning about yourself, who you are, what you want out of life, and what is important to you in life. And you can be so rich without 10 designer handbags and 3 sports cars. You can be rich in different ways. That's not to say that you can be totally happy if you've got nothing either. It's money doesn't buy you happiness, but, and I do get that without money, you can be very unhappy. So
it's definitely a happy medium.
Definitely a happy medium there. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Like you mentioned, reframing your hardships and reframing some of the struggles that you go through, and using those to build success, as well as building a wealthy lifestyle, more so than just money. So thank you for sharing with us today. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and tell people how they can follow along or how they can contribute to what you're doing.
Well, they can follow us on Instagram. So we are at Fit for Icons, at Gifts for Icons, at Fit for Icons Foundation, and also at Tessa Wilson MBA.
Great. And I'll share all that information in the show notes. Once again, thank you for your time. Looking forward to working with your company in the future.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for continuing to support this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, then please leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, subscribe so you continue to get the updated episodes. Until later, peace.
Hey, TimeOut with the SportsDr. Keep our head right in the game. We ain't never stopping. You are now tuned in. Trust, you don't want to miss. This is where life, sports, and medicine.